Okay.
Hello, hello.
Hey.
People's faces are starting to show.
Yeah.
Hi. Hey, David and Julia. Is that Julia?
Hi, it's Maria.
Hi, Maria.
Hello, it's Bobby.
Hi, Bobby. The faithful ones. That keep returning. Okay.
Unmute. Hi. I don't know why it's not working. It's seeing me.
Who's talking?
It's Sally Day Seuss, but I don't.
Sally. Do you see that? You see the video on the bottom of your screen?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. If you just,
Sorry.
yeah.
Okay. I should know that anyway.
There you are. Hi.
Hi.
Hi, hi.
Hmm.
Peggy's back.
Hi there. Hi, everybody.
Hi, hi, hi. Caitlin.
Hi,
Caitlin.
David.
Oh, wait a minute. Hi, Caitlin.
Hey, Amira.
Hi, Star. Hello. Is this everyone? Ricardo? Yeah? Okay.
Hi, everybody. This is Shantae Bliss.
Hi, Shantae. Welcome.
Hi.
So I think, hello and welcome, everybody. I think you've all muted yourself, which is good, because the quality of sound is better if everybody but the speaker is muted. But welcome to our third virtual town hall meeting. Very happy to see you all, some new faces and some old friends. And I hope you're all well, taking good care. And this is the best we can do in terms of gathering, so it is good to see you. I also just wanted to introduce a couple of the Poets and Writers staff that are here. Ricardo Hernandez, who works with me in the Readings and Workshops program. Oh, I didn't even say my name for those of you who don't know, but okay, I'll backtrack. Bonnie Rose Marcus, Director of the Readings and Workshops program East and Writers Exchange at Poets and Writers. And my program assistant, Ricardo Hernandez, is also the co-host for this meeting and the technical expert, as far as I'm concerned, who I wouldn't be able to do this without him, and I wouldn't be able to do a lot of the work that I do without him. So much gratitude to him. He's a very important part of our little team. And then there's Dan Tran Kong Huen, who has been our Joseph McCringle Fellow for the last 9 months, who's been a wonderful asset to the program. We are so happy she's been with us, and she's also helped immensely with these virtual programs. So very grateful. Tonight, the agenda is fairly simple. I'm going to give a little bit of an introduction about our journey from doing live events to funding virtual events. And then we have our wonderful guest speaker, Elana Bell, who's going to be talking to you about organizing, hosting, and running a virtual workshops. So we're very happy to have her here. And then there'll be time for questions and answers and conversation. And we've been trying to keep these meetings to about an hour, and it usually has worked out pretty well. So I don't know how, I think probably all of you are fairly maybe savvy about Zoom, but I'll just remind you of a few things. You already noted to mute yourself, except when you're speaking. There's a chat box on the side here that you're welcome to use to share any information. We'll be sharing some information there. When it comes to the question and answers, I think we're going to try to do it kind of live, but if you're more comfortable putting your question there, that's fine, and we'll see that question and be able to answer it as well. And then there's participant, the way to raise your hand, I mean, you can just do it like this, but there's a participant window that has a little hand raising, what do you call it, figure there, so you can also use that. Okay, and also we'll be recording this meeting. We had 2 other meetings that are recorded and on our YouTube channel. We will eventually post this one, so folks that you know that might want to learn something, they'll be available for the public. So, like many people, like many organizations, Poets and Writers made our journey from working live in our offices to all of us working remotely at home. And in terms of the Readings and Workshops program, which has been going for as long as the organization has been here. We're celebrating our 50th year. The Readings and Workshops program started the organizations, and basically it is a program that pays writers in the form of mini grants to read their own work, do a reading of their own work, or conduct a workshop or workshop series with participants. And we are very, what means a lot to us is diversity. We fund a diversity of writers, both emerging and professional, and we fund events in all sorts of, when we were doing live events, in all sorts of venues, from universities and libraries to senior centers with veterans and cancer survivors, etc. So when we realized we couldn't do live events, we came together and realized that it would be important for people to be able to, first of all, for writers to still get paid at a time when many people have lost some of their income, and to be able to still have events that connect community. And using poetry, as we know, writing and poetry is such an incredible tool, especially for times like this, challenging times. So, you know, the way our program, the way the application process works is very similar. It's still organizations or venues applying on behalf of writers, although we encourage writers to initiate this for themselves, even though it's taking place virtually. Our virtual guidelines are on our webpage. I think Ricardo's going to post that. But just to give you a few very key points that are different, most everything's the same, is that the deadline is 4 weeks, not 6 to 8. We're trying to be a little more flexible now during this time. And the checks are mailed directly to the writer after the event. And that might take a little more time than usual because we're all working remotely. And so there's a lot of pieces to put together to get a check cut and sent. So those are some of the changes. I think, let's see. And then just to note for people that don't know, our program funds events that take place in well, it's kind of odd to talk about this now, but the organizations need to be from New York State, California, or in 8 of our other cities, which you can also find on our webpage as well. So our first meeting really laid out all of these guidelines, you know, in more detail. Our second meeting was with Sarah Sala, who runs Office Hours Workshop, and she guided us through putting on a virtual reading series. And today we're very happy to have Ilana to talk about putting on how to do a workshop virtually. We thought it was really important to have these town halls at this time to really gather people together. And we've been really happy to be able to see the writers and the sponsors, some of whom we funded, some of whom are new. And we encourage you, you know, to take advantage of our program, especially during this time, because the feedback has been really positive. You know, some of our writing workshops with seniors have been a lifeline for a lot of those seniors. I know that Sally, who's here, does workshops at a crisis center, and that's been a lifeline, I'm sure, for those people. So, and reading series, you know, where people can attend who are all over the country or the world because it's virtual. That's the one thing, that's the sort of silver lining here, that, you know, the accessibility of virtual events. And maybe that will continue even when we're able to go live again. Who knows? It's something to think about. So I think, Ricardo, is there anything that you think I might have left out? Or Dan Tran? No? Okay. So I am going to introduce Ilana and let her take it from here. Before I read her bio, I just want to say Elana Bell has been teaching workshops at a senior center, the Lincoln Square Neighborhood Center. And I've attended many of those workshops, both live and virtually. They're wonderful. It's a wonderful group of people. And she continues to do that. But I will introduce you now with her bio. Elana Bell is a poet, sound practitioner, and creative guide. She facilitates artistic rituals and processes that support people in accessing their authentic voice and alchemizing raw experience and emotion into artistic expression. Ilana's first collection of poetry, Eyes, Stones, received the Walt Whitman Award from the Academy of American Poets. And her second book of poems, Mother Country, is forthcoming from BOA Editions in 2020. Congrats on that, wonderful. Look forward to seeing it. Ilana teaches poetry to first-year acting students at the Juilliard School and sings with the Resistance Revival Chorus, a group of women activists and musicians committed to bringing joy, and song to the resistant movement, which sounds incredible. And her web page is www.elanabell.com. So, Ilana, the stage is yours, or the view, or the whatever is yours, the meeting.
Thank you. First of all, Bonnie, thank you so much for inviting me to be a part of this, and just being a part of Poets and Writers and being a workshop leader during this time has meant a tremendous amount to me as well. It's given me a lifeline in the same way that it's given the participants a lifeline. I'm sure that other facilitators may feel the same way, that like being able to do this work during this time has had even a different kind of depth and meaning for me. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the different contexts that I teach in, and then really focus on the narrative of the sort of how we moved from live to virtual with the seniors, and talk a little bit about that. So again, as Bonnie said, I teach creative writing to actors at Juilliard. All of that was moved online. So this whole semester has been online with those actors. I also teach workshops privately that are more hybrid. So they combine sound work and vocal work, as well as creative writing and movement and other forms of expression. And some of that I'd been doing actually long before COVID. So I was familiar with the virtual space as a viable creative and workshop space. In terms of the Poets and Writers, the Lincoln Square Senior Center workshop, it's funny because we met, our first class of the spring was March 9th. So that was when we first went, and that was like right when things were about to kind of turn. And I remember my husband saying to me, he's like, do you think that the Poets and Writers is going to go online? And I was like, I don't know. Let me talk to Bonnie. I reached out to Bonnie. She's like, well, let's just see how they do it. And then literally within, I think, 3 days, that decision was made for everybody. But it felt good that we were a little bit ahead of the curve to kind of plan for that. And for this population, for the seniors who are an extremely vulnerable population, specifically to COVID, but in other ways too, it's meant a lot to them. And also New York City seniors are very used to being like super active. So like, they're not like seniors in maybe a small rural community. They're used to going to Juilliard, like, and Lincoln Center and the Met and the Opera, you know, those that are physically able are very, very active. So when we met, I mean, there was a real shock to their system to not be able to leave the house and to feel confined, and many of them live alone. And so just taking in that first week, the loneliness and the fear and the isolation, and being able to meet was for them a huge thing, and it continues to be. And in fact, they requested, and Poets and Writers was able to continue. It was supposed to be a 10-week series, which would have ended this week, and we were able to extend for an additional 10 weeks because they said to me, we don't know if we don't have this weekly thing that we get to come to on Monday, we actually would feel very lost. So I want you to know, if you're doing these workshops or planning them, how relevant and meaningful they are beyond even just how they might be seen in normal times. Like that this, for some people, is a real lifeline to have that community. And for me as a facilitator in general, but specifically during this time, I am as much concerned with connection and community as I am about the craft of writing. And that's something that matters a tremendous amount to me in my pedagogy. So speaking about how that sort of translated to an online space, what I call creating heart-centered spaces of connection, community, and craft, we begin every session with, first with actually a brief breath meditation. And that's been something that, and that's not everybody's thing, so I'm not saying that you should do that if that's not your thing. It is my thing, and I've brought it into the class, which I wouldn't necessarily have done in a live situation with them, because I found that it's helpful to center people because they're coming from whatever situation. Many of them have friends who are passing, or they're hearing the sirens or other things like that. So really finding whatever way works for you to really make a transition from whatever people are dealing with, you know, outside of the time you're going to meet to when you begin to meet, and making a space that, like, making it a sacred container, or some, you know, being aware that there's a transition, that we're creating a container, has felt important in terms of translating that feeling of being in the room and being connected, because so much of our connection in the room happens through eye contact and body language and just the feeling of being physically in presence with people. So thinking about ways to translate that. So for me, it's been like doing a brief meditation with breath, and then we do a check-in, and I ask the question, you know, where are you at today? Like, where are you at today? And that might be a word, or in some cases, you know, one day a woman had lost her father, and she needed a space to sort of process and speak about that. And it wasn't like a therapy session. It wasn't like a ton of time was spent on it, but it's felt important that there's a space for people to talk briefly even, excuse me, about what's happening in their life, you know, a brief check-in, whether it's one word or a sentence or something, because shit is real and people are going through really real shit and they're losing family. They're themselves, you know, concerned and vulnerable. And so, you know, to try to just move into like talking about text, you know, if I found it helpful to have a transition that really acknowledges our humanity, our shared humanity. And again, some of that happens organically when you're in the room, but in these Zoom rooms, I found that it's helpful to have some sort of a practice that allows for that. And then, and this is just something that I do generally as a facilitator in my workshops, I ask, what are you hoping to get out of this time? What are you hoping to receive? And that helps focus, like, what is your intention for this moment? I found that because the time is so amorphous and like days are amorphous and weeks are amorphous, so some way of marking the time and marking both the container in this moment, but then over weeks and months is helpful. And then we close every session with, what am I taking with me from today? And so that's a sort of way of actually acknowledging, like, what did I get out of this? And again, in this time when days and weeks are blending together, it's a way to celebrate a small moment. And sometimes they repeat the same thing every week, like, I'm just grateful for the community, or, you know, I'm grateful to have a place that I can come when everything else feels so crazy, or whatever it is. And sometimes it's more specific, like related to the texts. A lot of them have shared that it feels like a really good distraction to be able to talk about poetry and writing during this time, like an intellectual distraction from like the anxiety. Especially a lot of them in the senior community are like glued to the news. And so this feels like a different part of their brain. So I want to shift and talk a little bit more about some technical tips for Zoom. I'm going to just pop these in the chat box and then go through them. I'm not going to do, as I said to Bonnie and Ricardo, I'm not going to do like a deep how-to because most of that you can find online, but I'll just share kind of the things that have been helpful for me. Let me see, is that going to let me? No, let me, one sec. Hold on. This is the part actually of Zoom that I find challenging, is dealing with like Word documents and being on Zoom. It's not letting me cut and paste. Okay, so maybe I'll screen share. So and most of you I imagine might be familiar, so if this is remedial or redundant, forgive me, but hopefully for those of you that are not, it will be helpful. So there's two ways I only use Zoom, that's the platform that I use. There's lots of other platforms that you can work with, but that's the one that I've used as an interactive platform. So there's two ways anyone can join Zoom for free. The problem is, if it's a free membership, you only can have 45-minute workshops. The paid memberships, which I believe are $15 a month, allow you to have like a 23 or 24-hour workshop. So it's very helpful. And then in terms of safety and security, which is, people have talked about, you know, there's like Zoom bombers and things like that. So like not announcing your workshops anywhere public, or if you do like announce it on Facebook or something, you can set it up where you require an RSVP. So that's something you can set up when you set up your meeting, which I have found, I don't do that for the seniors because that's a continuous group, but if I was offering, like when I've offered free ones to the public that I'm putting on Facebook or Instagram, then I actually, you know, make people register. And that also captures their email. So you have a way of staying in touch with them afterwards, which is great if you're working independently. And the same way that Ricardo and Bonnie set up a waiting room so that when you had to wait to be admitted, that's another thing you can do, which gives you a little more control over who's entering your meeting. And that's just to protect against, as I'm sure you've all heard about, the Zoom bombers who are like coming in and doing distasteful things. It's been interesting to deal with the muting and unmuting. I think as Bonnie had everybody unmuted when they came in, because there's something that feels weird about talking to a muted room, like that adds a layer of like separation. So I don't mute people upon entry generally, but I do when we're reading texts or when people are sharing work, I do mute people because of the sound quality, but I often have moments of unmuting where people can all, like, when we make a sound or a gesture together, or, you know, when we applaud for someone or something like that, so that I kind of play with that back and forth to establish a sense of connection. As you're seeing right now, you can screen share texts. And that's something that's how when we're looking at a text, either a text by another author or a text by someone in the workshop, we do that so that everyone can share. Now, the thing is, Zoom also allows for you to call in and not be on video. And for some people, 3 of our seniors cannot get on Zoom video. And so that's been very frustrating for them to not see each other's faces, but yet they've wanted to stay connected and they've taken advantage of the phone option. And so for that, what I do, and again, this is a group that meets every week, so I email them ahead of time and ask them to send in the poems that they're going to share and so I put together a single document and I email it ahead of the workshop so that the people on the phone can read the poems along with us, even if they can't share the screen. And that's been useful and helpful. You already see about the chat box feature and ways that you can be communicating by chat if people are not able, but people on the phone cannot see the chat. So when I put free write prompts and things like that in the chat so that it helps people to see them. And that's not something you can do if you're calling in. And then I'm not sure, those of you familiar with breakout rooms where you can actually, it's a feature where you can have like pair share or smaller discussions. So if you want to have people like pair up and talk about a poem, you can create that, and that can be something that happens either manually where you decide which participants go together, or you can have Zoom do it automatically. So the breakout room feature has been really helpful in other workshops that I've been leading where I want to have more sort of small group discussion happening, and you can decide how many people are in each group. So that's something, if you're interested, I can tell you more details. You could also look that up if you have Zoom. Another cool thing is that you can play music while you are, and actually that I can you still hear me? Okay, so that I can demo for you right now. Do you want to hear a little music on Spotify and see how that, okay, cool. So let's see. Can you all hear that? It's kind of low. Let's see if I have some, here, this is a little. And I can also talk as this is happening. So can you hear my voice as well as the music? So for those of you that want to have like music playing while you're writing, or you want to, I do movement sometimes, and I'll speak as the movement is happening. So that's something that I love. You can listen to Michelle and Diego Cello a little bit and enjoy it. So that's been, I love that feature. And all you have to do, if you have Spotify in your computer, you just literally play it and your participants can hear it as long as you have the audio set up that way. And the final thing I want to just mention is that I also lead like sound multidisciplinary workshops, as I mentioned, that have like sound healing and instruments and voice. And so for that, I use a special microphone called the Yeti. And the Yeti microphone, I can show it to you. I'm not going to plug it in because it would change how I'm able to interact with you, but it's a really simple microphone that it's a USB microphone. So it goes, this plugs into your computer and you can just literally turn it on and you speak into it. And it's actually great for if you want to have more control over your sound quality, and you can use it for podcasting, for the workshop itself. If you have a lot of like other noise, you can make it stereo, or cardioid, different features that like control how the sound is heard. So those are kind of some technical pieces. And oh, someone said, is the sound coming from the laptop? Yes, it's coming from the laptop. It's coming directly from the laptop with the Spotify function. So anyway, those are just some things in terms of both creating a sense of heart-centeredness and connection in the space, and then some technical pieces that I wanted to share. And just to reiterate that these workshops, at whatever context you do them in, whether it's through Poets and Writers or whether you want to create your own workshop that you offer to your own communities or other communities, it's so needed right now. It's really meaningful. It's a powerful way to connect. And a lot of things, well, a lot of things don't translate, a lot of things do translate. And so I really encourage people to to do these and to continue them, and to, reach out for funding to Poets and Writers and put together things for local. And now you can put them together even for more global communities. So that's it for my presentation. And then I'm really happy to open it up to Q&A and anything that I can offer that is helpful. And of course, you may have questions for Bonnie and Ricardo. So if you do, please feel free to ask. Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
So I have a question.
Yeah, Amira.
Okay, hi. Thank you. Thank you again for that presentation. So we just did a workshop on Monday, and Peggy, I believe, did you, she tried doing it from her computer, but we couldn't hear. Do you have any idea why that happened?
Well, one thing you would want to check is that the volume is turned up all the way in Spotify.
Okay.
And then you would want to check that the volume is turned up all the way on your computer in Zoom. Those are two like troubleshooting things to start with. And then the other thing is it depends, like if you have headphones on or things like that, that could interfere with what's happening. So I found that when I'm playing sound, I take my headphones out, I don't use my microphone, that gives the best sound quality. And I don't have to share my screen when I'm doing the Spotify. So, excuse me, I could play the Spotify for you now without sharing the screen and you would hear it perfectly.
Okay. Is it just with Spotify? Like if you playing any other sound, like on a website, would that work the same, or is it
So
just?
I've used YouTube before, and then I have done it through a screen share, and it's been okay.
Okay.
I use Spotify most often because mostly I'm playing music for my purposes, but there's a way you can test it. So what you can do, and I've actually done this a lot, is do you have a Zoom membership? Are you a Zoom?
I do, yes.
I do.
So you can record, you can do a practice round. So this is actually something when I do, and I've used this not so much with my seniors, but when I do my sound workshops, because that requires a lot of complexity. So I've done practices. So I actually record a session and hear exactly how it's working and what's being heard. And then I can stop the recording. Zoom will send me the recording and I can go back and listen. So you could actually test like, oh, let me try this one. Let me see which works better. And then you'll actually know what you need to do. So that's been a thing that I've done a lot when I have complex sound issues that I need to work out.
Okay.
Yeah, we're gonna have to try that. We tried just playing it for yesterday's workshop. We wanted to include the audio of certain folks reading their work, and we tried it for the first 45 minutes before, and it wasn't sounding right. And I had a mirror like, can you hear it now? It was a mess. But then I ended up playing it on my phone and putting it to the speaker of the laptop, and that worked way better. But it felt like I was an octopus. Like I had to facilitate the workshop. I had to do the audio. I had to do the things. And Mira was on the other side letting people into the room because people were late, which was fine. But it was just kind of tricky. But we're going to try it that way. We're going to record it like you suggested and see what happens.
Yeah, and then you can hear back what happens. And just make sure that your sound is set up so that like you can test that, like you can look in Zoom on the different, like if you go to I can't do it here, but if you go next to the icon where it says stop video at the bottom left of your screen, if you click on that and you click on video settings, and then it'll pull a drop down menu and it'll offer you audio settings as well, and you can check the audio, and you just want to make sure like that which audio you have, because that can also impact what is being heard. And you'd want to have the internal speakers working for that.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. My
Thank
pleasure.
you.
I see Caitlin has a question in the chat box. I was wondering your thoughts on continuing Zoom events after the quarantine ends. Do you think there's a good way to continue incorporating Zoom viewers? Do you foresee people still wanting to attend Zoom events? Thanks, love your ideas. Yes. So I've been teaching virtual workshops since over a year before quarantine happened. And there certainly is a market for it because not everybody lives in the city that you live in. And if you want to expand your reach, and I think after quarantine, people are going to be used to this way of working. So that even when we go back to in person, first of all, I think it's going to be a very slow, what's the word? A scaffold, that is the word I'm using. It's not exactly the right word, but like it's going to be a process, right? It's not like everything's going to just open up at once. I think people are going to feel not necessarily 100%, especially in New York City, 100% safe about like immediately going back into live events that are in small venues where the air is not so, like people are going to be concerned for some time. So I think that this is here to stay. I hope that it's not only Zoom things, because I really am a live person. So I really appreciate being able to be live. And I hope that we have a mix and a hybrid. But I do think that virtual events are here to stay. And I also want to say, although Zoom is what I use for interactive events, but if you're doing something where you just are presenting and you don't need to have interaction, Facebook Live, actually the sound is much better. And it's like an easier, and now I think Facebook is going to make it a way that you actually can charge for those readings, or like have people pay for them. So that's something that Mark Zuckerberg is working on, for artists to be able to be paid for, because previously Facebook Live, just you turn it on, anybody could just come to it. And people have been putting like little Venmo things, like, please, send me a Venmo or whatever. But now I think he is going to have something where you actually can make them paid events that you have to pay Facebook Lives, you have to register for. But both Instagram and Facebook Live are great platforms for like a reading or something where you're not needing to be interactive and see people. I mean, if you want to see people, then it has to be Zoom or Google or something where everybody can be on the screen. But I do think that virtual events are here to stay. Yeah. Any other questions or comments? I can answer technical things too. In terms of student participation, have you noticed a big difference between virtual and in-person workshops? Any tips to get folks more involved and get over the awkwardness? Are you speaking about students like my Juilliard, like young people, or are you speaking about any participants? Can you clarify that, Donnie?
Hi.
Hi.
Yeah, I just mean really any students. I'm doing a workshop that has students of all ages and sort of all levels, and I'm used to doing it in person. So this is my first time virtual.
So I think, in the situations that I'm in with the workshops I teach for Juilliard and for poets and writers, I have the advantage of having had a connection with them in real time before this happened, so I already have, but with my private workshops that I do, I didn't. Those people have only worked with me virtually. And I think what I said about trying to find ways to establish a connection before you move right into the material and the content, so with young people, I would probably do something different than like breathing and checking it, like they would not be into that. But I might ask a silly question, or I might do a big group shake, or, something that is like embodied, because I think just sitting right away like drains energy. And I think that having a way to connect with people that is like, yeah, and I would do that in the live workshop, but I think in Zoom, like a way to make them feel seen. I think, calling people by name, I think that kind of thing is meaningful and is helpful. Does that answer your question? Is there more that I can say about that? Okay.
Yes,
the
thank
other thing
you.
is with young people, so I would, in the chat, there's a way you can make the chat function so that you can only chat with either the host or everyone. And I would enable that when I do a chat with people who are like, because otherwise they might be chatting with each other and that's really distracting. I would set some guidelines around like no texting, put your phones away, like this is a really important, and really ask for them to honor that. I mean, you can't control them, but if that's if you are explicit about that and how that's, a way of respecting each other in the space, I think setting those kind of guidelines is helpful. Beth asked, what is your usual time frame for workshops? How long is the event? How much of that time is spent presenting information or discussing a text? How much time for participants to write or share writing? So with the seniors at Lincoln Center, the way it works, we have 2 hours, and that's, that's the length of the workshop as it's been mandated by poets and writers. And so we do, I would say, we start with actually the first thing I start with is a free write before we even do our check-in, and that's a way for them to just like, be with themselves, and that's for like 5 or 10 minutes. Then we do a check-in, which is anywhere from like probably around 10, 15 minutes. And then we used to do, this is a group of like really, they've been together a long time, they write a long time. So, and because it's extended and we have many weeks together, so we'll do, we used to do that, we would look at a text, discuss it, and then like give a writing assignment, and then we would do workshopping of their work. Now, because they're always bringing in work, so I've done like an every other week model where we do 1 week like let's say you have a 10-week series. So we do 1 week generative, 1 week workshopping, 1 week generative, 1 week workshopping. So every workshop includes the free writing and includes the check-in. And then we're going in between, like then we can really dive deeply into a text.
Mom,
Yes, Surya.
I wanted to see my track.
I'm gonna, baby, but I'm literally right in the middle of talking
I
to
love
you.
it. I love it.
Right now.
I can't do it right now, baby.
No.
So babe, I need you to take him because
That's
I'm
my
literally
whole life
answering a
right
question.
there.
Can you come get him, babe? I'm literally answering a question at this workshop right now, and it's being recorded. So we have, that gives us more time to like go deeply into the workshopping. So we spend about, an hour and 20 minutes on the workshopping. Or when it's generative, then we really get to go more in depth on a text discussion, and then have them do a writing exercise where they really get to spend time and make something. So that model has worked for me really well with an extended, like when you have a series. If it's a one-off workshop, I think 2 hours, 90 minutes to 2 hours is good. I wouldn't do too much longer than that, especially if it's not people that you have like a longer term relationship with. Did that answer your question, Beth, or is there more that you have to it? Yeah, okay. Peggy said breakout rooms with the same group of people helps foster new connections and build online community. Yes, awesome. That's a great suggestion. I always begin with a 7-minute check-in during the breakout rooms to have people chat, get to know each other, share social media. People really like it. Thanks, Peggy. That's really helpful. Did you have another question, Amira?
No, I was just going to mention that helps a lot. Like when there's only 4 people to talk to, just to talk about what you've been doing, it helps a lot. So that was it.
Yeah, that's super great advice. Thank you both for that. Yeah, Elena?
Oh, wait, am I muted?
You're unmuted now.
Thank you. First of all, thank you for all that you are saying and giving and doing. I also teach a long-time seniors workshop. And they are really active. I mean, they're virtually all of them are involved and engaged in extended projects or something that maybe will come up and then they'll go at it. But what I've been doing, I always give prompts. Sometimes I give a prompt at the beginning as opposed to a free write, but I always give a prompt at the end. And what I've been doing since we've been in lockdown is I also send a prompt on occasion if something occurs to me midweek. I send it to them and they always know, as I always tell them, it's never a requirement, always an elective. But at least this way, if they either get stuck with what they're writing or their minds just need to focus on some other thing, there it is. And the prompts are comprised of either things that come to my head, so my work, my brain, or something I've read that I've pulled and I think is really something they want to, just, consider. So I'll just put that out there. So prompts are not just during the class. And this way they all, as I say, they can kind of have a storehouse of them.
That's great. I should clarify, when I say free write, what I mean by free write, I also give it's like a prompted free write. It has like some kind of and it's usually connected to the text that we're going to read and look at, so that it kind of is like a little massaging their way into what we're going to look at, or the concept, or the, the craft thing we're going to look at, or the idea that we're going to look at. And then I think, even sending prompts during the week is a great idea. And our group is super like active. And so they sometimes send like articles or like, things of interest. And that's a way of that's a really great suggestion of just keeping the group connected in between sessions. I love that.
And also one other thing, they may not be prompts. I mean, I have some people have become, especially this one woman, just an incredibly strong poet at this point. So again, if I just see a poem and I think, oh, because I know them really well and you seem to know your group really well, sometimes I will structure something or send something to one person that, again, I mean, I may or may not have done in the course of the regular, in the course of regular life, I would have brought it in and handed it to him or her in person. But now, if I read something and I think, oh, that so-and-so would really like that, I send it along. Just something else to think about.
That's great. Thank you so much for that suggestion.
I think there was a question from David. Yeah. Did you have a question, David? I thought it.
I'm sorry. Am I muted?
Yeah.
I'm unmuted.
You're unmuted.
Okay. Hi. Sorry. I'm not sure if this is going to be helpful to how many people, but I teach a group of veterans, and they are, and you are so right. The social aspect is just so huge with these workshops, particularly now, but it always was with these guys. So what I do is I open up when I schedule a Zoom meeting. I schedule an extra 20 minutes at the beginning. And I do the feature where they can join. You select where they can join without the host. And I call it the Virtual Veterans Lounge. And so the Virtual Veterans Lounge, when I send the invitation out by email, the Virtual Veterans Lounge is open at 6:10. And so these guys get on there and they just BS for 20 minutes like they love to. And I find that that's helpful, because if I come on it's showtime, and we all start together, they really want to socialize, and I'm having to pressure them to not do that so we can get the work done, because they're always going to want to socialize more than I'm going to want to let them, even though the community, like you said, the community is hugely important. So I don't know if that's helpful to anybody else, but if you find that that's an issue, particularly with groups that know each other well, if you're in the position to do so, you could schedule that little virtual chatting lounge.
I'm going to use that, David. I'm going to offer that to my seniors.
Yes, thank you, David. That was great. That's a great idea.
Seriously.
I kind of use it on the other end. I will leave the meeting, but they will continue if they want.
Yeah, Sally. Can you unmute yourself? It's not letting me unmute you.
Does that work?
Yep.
Yep. Hi. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you for doing the workshop. It's really interesting. And I've been, I'm just curious about, I'm not sure if I understood it, like the workshops I'm doing with people from all 5 boroughs crisis respites that are without their respites or their support are coming in on these meetings, and they are a particularly fragile group. And so I don't mute them. It's been going pretty well. I just sort of ask them I kind of make a joke out of it. Like, okay, if you're going to go to the bathroom or we have your TV on, we're all going to hear that. So, but people have been pretty considerate about that, because it seems like, unless there's another way to do it, like to be muting and unmuting. And so far I've just been asking for people to be considerate, and it's awkward, because sometimes when it gets a little hectic, I don't want to just cut somebody off. So I'm not sure how to deal with that, particularly with the people that I'm writing with. Just very concerned about anybody feeling like they're not getting heard. And, that's a big part of it, to talk about what's going on. And I do a group poem with everyone in the beginning, so I want to hear everybody's, call out on that topic, to do that as we start. So you were saying that you keep everyone unmuted and then do like this way, like you'll unmute that person.
Yeah, it depends on what we're doing in the moment. What I've found, unfortunately, is with certain people, when everybody's unmuted, the sound gets garbled, and people, especially on the phone, can't really hear what's going on. So it has a negative impact on their ability to hear what people are saying. That may not be the case for your situation. I definitely, I agree. I like the feeling of people being unmuted more, because you get a little, like, you hear that little crackle and you have a sense of connection. So I often start with it unmuted and then tell them, okay, now I'm going to mute you because, for sound quality, or especially because people are on the phone. So I let them know, okay, we're going to do the free write. And so I'm going to mute you for the 5 minutes. You can just focus and be in your own. So I try to be explicit about it and kind of name it. And I've just found that sometimes, like when I'm doing screen share, I often unmute people because I can't always see who wants to talk. And, so, but we've had the issue of it being difficult for people to hear then when someone's speaking with certain people.
But then my only one last thing is just that, because I want them to be able to hear each other's responses to what they're saying and reading. That's my only other thing. Like
reading, like in real time as it's happening, as
yeah, Like,
Yeah, so then keep doing what you're doing, and if you don't find that it's having a negative effect, then you should just do what you do. I only do it because, like I said, it makes it hard for people to hear often, and some of them are hard of hearing anyway as it is, and they can hear an echo or like things like that, or sometimes noise is happening outside the window. And so, but like I said, if I try to be explicit about it. I don't just do it. Like I let people know that, okay, I'm going to mute you now. And, or because I'm having a hard time hearing, or I'm just going to let so-and-so speak and then I'll unmute everybody. So, I sort of do that to be explicit about it. So people don't feel like they're being shut down, like in some way. That's, definitely not my intention, but you have a different population, and maybe the priority might be, as you're saying, to just make sure that everyone feels heard at all times. And that may mean that people lose some sound, or you can ask them, hey, are you losing sound? It would be, I think if I muted some people, you can have, I think you could maybe have a conversation with them. If it's feeling like it's not working or it's impacting the sound, maybe it's something you could bring up and just be transparent about it and say like, hey, it's really important that you feel heard. And I'm wondering, I'm having a hard time with the sound quality. Maybe for this, we'll try an experiment and get their feedback. So they're part of the process, so they feel included and not like it's being done to them,
Definitely. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Just to add something to that, I've been to a reading where the hosts of the reading, where like it was sort of an open mic kind of thing, really encouraged people to respond in the chat, and it went wild. It was like people were just going yay, they were snapping their fingers. I don't know if that would work for your group, but it was just so that the reader got to see that all these people were responding in writing. Just an idea.
Beth, you asked, is there a limit of how many people can participate? So Zoom Pro, the paid account, has a limit of 100 people. And I believe you can pay extra to get more people on with Zoom Pro. But that's the account that I have, and I've never taught anything that had more than 100 people, so that's been enough for me. But if you think you might have a really, really large crowd, there are ways to get it increased. Do you find it hard to manage that many people? Can you be a little more explicit in your question? And do you want to unmute yourself, or you want to just put it in the chat box?
I can unmute myself. Just wondering, in a normal workshop, you kind of limit how many people you're going to be dealing with, just so that you can make sure that everybody feels seen and heard. And so I'm just wondering if in the virtual format, how you deal with that.
So the biggest virtual workshop I've taught has had like maybe 35 people in it. And that was one that I did on my own that wasn't connected to Poets and Writers, and so I did things like, normally I would check in and everybody would speak, right? But so I did a thing where I had people write down like, what are you hoping, how are you feeling? What are you hoping to receive? And then they would write it down. And then I said, does anybody feel like you really need to be witnessed in this? And so maybe like 5 people felt that they wanted to say it, or I would say, or you can put it in the chat box. So, thinking of ways to include people. Oh, wow, Peggy. So maybe you can speak about how, Peggy, you want to answer that? I'll finish my thought, and then I'd love to hear you speak about how you did it with 40 people. But just, so having ways where it was like kind of, and then at the end of the workshop, I asked everyone, what are you taking away? Which normally I would go around and everybody say, and they wrote it down and they held it up to their screen. And then I read some of them out loud, but it was a way for people to feel like, oh, wow, I'm being included, and what I have to say is part of the conversation, but it's not taking the time and the management of like asking every single person to speak in that way, but they are finding ways to be included. Caitlin says, we have muted audience and they clap towards the camera after each poem, so there's a response for the poem. And we do this, like at Juilliard, this is what they do, like the kind of like this kind of clapping. Peggy or Amir, do you want to speak about how you manage 39 people? I can't unmute you, but can you unmute yourself? Or Amira, do you want to speak about it? Yeah, there you go.
I mean, the breakout rooms, we've been, like everything that you've been talking about, we've been using. So yeah, she opens it in the beginning, everything's open, people could kind of communicate. The only time that it's really all muted is when somebody's reading the poem. We work together to kind of mute, because she's like going through all the prompts and doing that, I try to be the one muting and like, so it doesn't get all nuts. The breakout rooms helps for people to kind of feel heard. And then when we come back after the breakout rooms, we're able to kind of like talk a bit about how the breakout rooms went and, you know, all that fun stuff. Peggy, do you have any details I didn't get?
I learned this week with Amira, because every time we do it, it's a new process, and we incorporate everything we learn here and everywhere else. So I also join other people's workshops to learn how they do it, because we're all learning.
Yeah.
This week we learned that someone gave us a suggestion from the last virtual session, and she was like, it would be great if you could leave the same breakout room so that I don't have to keep introducing myself to other people. I kind of want to stay with my group. And I was like, cool. So we did that, and we left the groups consistent for 3 rounds. And then the last round, I said, now we're just going to meet somebody new.
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun, but for the next session, we want to incorporate some kind of movement, because it's 2 hours. And although people are like in it, they're invested and they're happy, and you see them like really loving it, we want to incorporate some kind of movement. So we were thinking about adding music just as people are coming back from the breakout room. So we'll do like a virtual dance hall. 30 seconds that they're all joining. I was doing it anyway with no music, because I was, you know, that's just my energy. And they were like, we love your energy. I'm like, I'm losing it. That's what, like, I'm facilitating, and I'm also creating all this chaos. But it would help greatly. And this we learned, Amira and I, it would help greatly if you have a second person as a co-host. So that help. Because if you're doing all these things and you have a large crowd, we didn't expect 39. We had capped it at first, but what happened was that people were signing up and they weren't showing up. So they were taking a space from someone who really wanted it. And we kept getting people texting us the last minute, like, do you have a space? Do you have a space? So we decided on this one to open it, and it was like an influx of 15 people, like 5 minutes before.
And even with that, even with it being open, like after it was open, people were still sending messages. I'm like trying to send the link here, link there. So yeah, that was interesting. Afterwards, I didn't even tell you, it was like 50 people signed up on Eventbrite. So not everybody that actually signed up was able to make it, I guess. And I'm like, was it me? But I know we let everybody in. So I'm not sure exactly what it is, if people just forgot. But yeah, like
So it was either open it and risk being 39 people, or closing it and then risk having 10 people, because but 10 will show up. So it was just like, let's just leave it open and see what happens. It was great chaos. It was just chaos. But afterwards, I needed a nap. I don't drank at that point. It was a lot. It was just a lot.
And see if you can get that Spotify situated for the music. If you could get that hooked up, because it will like add, right? Then you have it at loud volume. You can just pop it from. You can make playlists, all that.
Oh, I can't wait. That's we were just texting, like, we're gonna try that. We're gonna try that.
Yeah, and that early, like opening up early, I think that would be great. Like just kind of giving people a chance to like get to know each other, and then, you know, because that'd be great.
But thanks, y'all.
I just wanted to make people aware that we're almost on time, but I also just wanted to, for people that haven't spoken, that either want to just share something, or, you know, introduce yourself or have a question, we have a couple of minutes, 2 minutes, and I just want to, you know, end with a little closure. But I just, in case there's somebody that didn't get a chance to speak and would like to, go for it.
Hi. Hello, I'm new to this group, so it's been, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, wonderful. Hi, Ilana. Hi, Bonnie. I've been running my own workshops. I live in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and I run private workshops. Excuse me. And I know I am panicking because I'm not good with anything with social media or online stuff. So I came here to get the courage so that I can start some Zoom classes, since I can't have them in my home anymore. I still do one-on-ones via the phone or FaceTime. But I'm just hoping, I mean, I came here just to kind of feel encouraged and to maybe have the strength to get started, you know. So I've looked at a couple of the tutorials from Zoom, but I just have to do it. So there's none of you can help me with that. I just have to jump in and do it. But any thoughts, anything on getting started would be helpful.
So I think I would suggest that you do a free one first to like generate interest.
Good.
Reach
Good.
out to your community and offer
Right.
like a free poetry workshop, you know, and then
Yeah.
have in mind what you're going to offer that you're going to charge for. So if it's like
Mhm.
let's say you're going to do a series of 6 weeks, so that at the end of
Right,
the free
right.
one, you kind of pitch it. You also have everybody register, so you have their email.
Mm-hmm,
I don't know how you normally
I
advertise.
do have a mailing list of people that I teach in my community, and they sign up, and then I set things up. For me, it's and I think I love the idea of doing like a free meet sometime, and just having a group of people sign up and chat with them and give them ideas about what my next workshops are going to be like. I love that idea, so thank you for that. But I do have a mailing list, so maybe I can just continue to invite people to sign up and then actually do it. I think it's just the actual doing of it that's really, really scary for me. But I know I need to get there. And
Is
I'll
the fear technological, or what's the issue?
it's just that I'm not tech savvy, so it just makes me very anxious. So even if it's something very simple, I'll kind of panic. But I think it's just, like I said, if I have to do it.
I'm sure. Do you have a friend who's really good on technology who can help
They
you?
are. I need to get some support.
Yeah, I will just say
say hi to Bonnie. I don't know if you remember me. I was with the Matwala reading in New York.
Yes, yes. And I will tell you that I am totally not a technological person. I set up my own little Zoom. I set up my own little Zoom for our readings and workshops check-in, and I have help. So, and you can also practice if you
I'll
set
get
up
a co-host.
Yeah, if you set up a free Zoom, you can practice,
Oh,
and
yeah.
you can just be very out front about it. This is new for me. We're doing this
Right.
together, because it's
right.
yeah.
Thanks.
I would.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Thanks so much. Thanks, Ilana.
Yeah, sure. My pleasure.
Hi, I'm Giovanni, and I'm in Houston, Texas, and in a PhD program here, and I'm used to running workshops. I'm not a technophobe, but I've spent so much time on Zoom now that it's been really hard. But I actually have a question. How do people feel about virtual backgrounds? Has anyone used those, and how they impact your messaging and your audience? Because I've been using one, but I noticed that there is a difference even in my response to them. So I'm just kind of curious. Maybe it's a silly question, but I'm just wondering.
I don't use them because my computer doesn't support it because it's too old of an operating system. And so I actually can't use it, but I do think they create a different kind of vibe. I think there is like a level of like distance that it creates. And for me at least, so I feel like, I try to keep my room relatively clean, like, so it's not a horrible mess, but I feel like I like people to feel like, oh, I'm like in your home with you. Like it's kind of an intimacy, but that again is a personal probably preference and aesthetic bias. I don't know if other people have different thoughts about that.
Yeah, I mean, with me, it's not so much a mess, but the lighting issue. Oh my God. Getting the lighting has been a real challenge, really.
Yeah.
Thanks for offering this. It's great.
So I'm going to say that we're just a little past 7. I want to thank Ilana. That was a great presentation. It was really helpful, and all of your questions and all that you all had to offer, because this is kind of a group community. You all have experience and offered it to all of us. We'll be following up with an email to all of you with putting just some of the links just so you have them, and just if you said that you were you were happy to share your emails, we'll also make a list of the people that were here with their emails. And please feel free to contact Ricardo or I or Dan Tran in our program through our email. I think we put it on there, rw/east@pw.org, or our personal emails. And if you have questions about the funding or questions about how to, or you have an idea you want to run by us, we're a small department, and we're happy to email with you, and you can leave a message on our voicemails as well. So I think, Ricardo, anything you want to add that might have been missed? No? Okay. Dan Tran? No? Okay, so it's so nice to see you all. Continue all your great work, and we're going to be doing more things. I'm not sure what our next thing is virtually, but keep your eyes open and we'll send out information about it. So take good care, everybody. Be well. And yeah, thanks for being here.